Okay, so we're continuing with Chasidus, right? With chapter 19. So, unedaber atam inyan ha'ahava. Now we're going to speak about the inyan ha'ahava. V'anafeho hem shloisha, and there are three branches. Hasimcha, joy. Hadvekus, clinging, right? Clinging. V'akina, and jealousy or zealousness. Okay? So let's see. V'hine inyan ha'ava hu shiya odam choshek u'misave mamash el kirvosoi yizborach v'roidef achar kedushosoi. So what's the idea behind love? It's a person choshek, desires, u'misave, right? In other words, yearning, craving, mamash. Real craving for what? For kirvosoi yizborach, for closeness to Hashem, and pursues it, and pursues his kedusha, pursues his holiness. Okay, so that's the definition of love. Okay, kasher yirdoif ish acher, like a person who pursues hanechmad mimeno chemda aza, who pursues somebody else, something else that something that he craves, something something tangible, something physical. So just like the same kind of tangible love and desire that a person has for certain things that he loves, that's the kind of love that he is supposed to have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To such a degree that Hashem's name, just mentioning Hashem's name, v'dibur b'tiloisav, or speaking Hashem's praises, v'ha'esek b'divrei teirosoi, or the involvement, in the words of Hashem's Torah, ve'elakusoi, and his godliness, is baruch sha'ashua ve'oineg, it becomes delight, right, and pleasure, mamish, right. So when you enjoy something you love something, you even talking about it gives you pleasure, tangible pleasure, right. Kamisha oyavas eishes ne'urav, just like somebody who loves his like the love of his youth. Or his only son, ahava chazaka, a strong love. Asher afilu adibur bom, such a degree that even speaking about them, it gives him pleasure and enjoyment. Okay, okay. Inyan hakosov, like the pasuk says, kimidei dabri boy zocher es kirena oid. Right, this is the pasuk that we say on Rosh Hashanah. When I speak about him and I mention it, right? And then the pasuk continues, right? This is talking about Ephraim, but Ephraim over there is a euphemism for all of Klal Yisrael. Ephraim, my favorite son, right? Im Yeled Shashuai, that's right, there's a delightful child. Okay, so that is the definition of love. The definition of love is simply love. Tangible, real love. Okay? Fine. Okay. V'hinei vadai, certainly, Misha oihav es boira hava amiti, somebody who really truly loves Hashem, lo yaniach avoidosoi l'shum tam sheboilam. Then he is not going to renege, he's not going to abandon his service for any reason. Right? Unless it's really against his will. Right? So again, we mentioned already a few times that love is demonstrated through its challenges. Love is demonstrated through its challenges, right? If you do something positive for another person out of love, but it's not, I found something on the street. I brought you a present here. That's not a present. But if I went out of my way and I purchased this and I spent lots of money and it took me, lots of effort, then it shows love, right? So love is perceived in its effort, right? So that's why he's saying that somebody who truly loves Hashem, he's not going to abandon his service for any reason. In other words, that's when you see, right, when the person overcomes challenges, that's when you see how much love a person has for Hashem. Lo yitztarich ritzu upitul avoda. He does not require, a person who loves Hashem does not require to be appeased or to be convinced, right? To be enticed to do the service of Hashem. Ela adarabah, just the opposite. Libo yisayehu v'yitzehu eleho. His heart, his heart brings towards it. Unless there is a real impediment that prevents him from doing it. Okay, so that's the litmus test, right? This is the real midah that is desired. That's right. Asher eleho zochu hachasidim rishonim. To this midah of love, the original Chasidim, Kedoshi Elyon, the holy ones, they were zoichet to such a level of ahava. U'kamayimar David HaMelech olav hasholem, like David HaMelech says, Ke'ayol tarag alafi kemayim, ke'nafshi sarag elecha elekim. Right, so it's a famous pasuk, right, a song, like an ayol that thirsts for water. That's how much my soul earns for your closeness. Right? My soul is thirsts for God, le'el chai, to the living God. When will I come and see the face of Hashem? Right? So it's closeness to Hashem that I desire. And he also says in another place, right? My soul yearns and pines to be in the courtyard of Hashem. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh, longs for you. Right? In other words, very tangible, very, very real love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So again, we're going to bring a lot of psukim in this chapter, and probably somebody who really understands Ramchal and understands psukim, maybe there's an element in each pasuk that is not available in the other psukim, right? But the point is that we see, we see how deep and how raw this love is supposed to be. Kol zeh mitoykef hatshuka. All of these, this love comes from the strength of his desire, of his yearning. That his yearns for Hashem. And the same thing, the Navi writes, L'shimcha u'lezichrecha tavas nefesh. For your name and for your remembrance, my soul desired. Ve'omer nafshi ivisicha balayla afruchi bekirbe ashachrecha. My soul desired you during the night. As long as my spirit is within me, I seek you out. Afruchi bekirbi, right? As long as my ruchi is bekirbi, is within me, ashachrecha, I pursue you. Okay, David atzmo yomer, again, another pasuk. David himself said, Im zecherticha al yitzuoi. If I remember it, when I remember you upon my couch, Bashmurois, right, in the night, Ehegeboch, I speak in you. Yeah. Okay, Be'er ha'oinig v'asha'ashua shehoyloi b'dabre boi b'shvacha v'izbarach. So he explains the pleasure, the enjoyment that he got just speaking the praises of Hashem. V'omer b'ashtasha, I delight b'mitzvaysecha sharahavti v'omer gam ha'idvaysecha sha'ashuai. Again, all of these psukim, and I'm not sure why he's bringing all of them. I don't fully understand every single pasuk. But the illustration, the imagery of these psukim are very almost like physical, almost romantic kind of love. There's different kinds of love, right? There's a love between friends. There's love between lovers, right? There's love between parents and children. There's different sorts of loves, and all of these expressions of love are supposed to be found in Hashem. So, I think the Rambam says that one of the antidotes for taiva towards things that are inappropriate, illicit love, is for one's heart to be filled with the love of Hashem. So he says at the end of Hilchas Tshuva, right? In other words, the more a person occupies his mind with the love of Hashem, the less there's room for other inappropriate things. So that's what it seems like also over here, that David HaMelech is saying that even on my couch, meaning on my bed, and places where I usually, in other words, where people usually have other sorts of love, my mind was preoccupied with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay, so that's these are all just the basic idea of love, and it's not even telling you what it is, but as much as it's telling you how it's supposed to emanate. Now, furthermore, he says this type of love cannot be love that's tluya b'dover, that's dependent on something. The person should not love Hashem just because Hashem does good for him. Makes him rich. Makes him successful. It should be like a love of a son to a father. Which is love that is natural. It is natural that my nature forces me into this love. Kind of, it's instinctive. Like a pasuk says that Hashem is your father. Right, but there's a pasuk in the Hazinu, right? The pasuk says, right, how can you do this to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Hashem is your father, right? In other words, it's not a question of Hashem providing for you, and that's why you love him. Which is a father provides for a son, but for a child, but that's not why a son loves his father. You're my father. You gave, So, okay, so fine. So umivchan ha'ava azois, the test for this love, who bizman hadoichik ba'atzara, right? Exactly like we mentioned before, is that the time when it's difficult and when it is tzara, that's when you really see if the love is tluya b'dover. V'cheinom zechron levracha, v'havta Hashem elokecha b'chol v'chol v'chol nafshecha, right? We learn from there. I feel even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes away your nefesh, right? You still have to. Right? How far is the mitzvah of V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha go? I feel noidelos nafshecha, meaning even to the point of losing one's life. Right? It's still right in the midst of Auschwitz. There's still a mitzvah of V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha. All right. Okay, and from B'chol Me'adecha we learn B'chol Me'oincha, that even with all of your money, right? And assuming he means the Gemara says that, right? Why does it say B'chol Nafshecha if you have to give up your life? Why does it say B'chol Me'oincha? But there are some people for whom, it's easier to give up their life than to give up their money. Some people vice versa. So that's why it's both, right? In other words, there's to die for God and there's to live for God, right? To die for God, sometimes it's easier to die for God once, and that's it. And to live for God means to give up your money, give up your comforts, give up your whatever. So it's more complicated, right? Okay, so. Okay, we'll come back to this, right? So again, so he's saying it has to be a love that's not tluya b'dover, right? I don't love HaKadosh Baruch Hu because of something that he does for me. It's a natural, built-in kind of love. Natural, built-in kind of love. Okay? And the litmus test is if that benefit, so to speak, is taken away. Right? Then let's see, right? Is it tluya b'dover or is it not? Let's see, right? Okay, Amnam. So let's see again. This is where he gets into it. Interesting. Amnam kadesh lo tiyena atzoras v'adchokim koishi umeniya ala ahava. Okay, it's nice to say, but let's say I have tzoros and I have chokim, I have difficulties, right? So they can become koishi, they become difficulty umeniya and impediments to this sort of love, right? So what should I do, right? In face of that suffering, what should I do? So a person for whom difficulties, right, in life become difficulties in having the love of Hashem, so he has to think about two answers, two tshuvas. One is for everybody, but the second one is to the sages, to the chachomim that have deya ha'amuka, that have deep knowledge, right? Okay, so what's the first one? The first answer is Kol Mai Da'avdin Min Shamayim L'Tav. Anything that's done for Shamayim is for good. Okay? Kol Da'avdin Min Shamayim L'Tav. So, okay, great. V'zeh ki afilu atzar ahu. That is to tell us that even the tsar and the doichik, right? Hanira be'einav ra, that seem to be ra, it's really, in truth, true good. Toiva amitis. It's really toiva amitis. Okay. Ukemishal haroife hachoisech asabosor oyasa aver shenifsad, like a marshal of a surgeon that cuts away some flesh or even an entire aver organ. Shenifsad, which was ruined. Why? In order to revive, to make, to retain the rest of the body, that a person should not die. That even though it appears, that the act is an act of cruelty, right? Chopping off Chas v'Sholem his hand, right? So it seems like a very cruel thing to do. But it's only it's pure rachmanos because he's trying to save him. The patient does not hate his doctor as a result of this action. Just the opposite. Just the opposite. He has more love and more appreciation for the surgeon because the surgeon did such a good job, right? So similarly, it's the same thing. When the person contemplates that everything that Kodesh Baruch Hu does for him, he does for his good, whether it be in his body, whether it will be with his money. Now, I don't necessarily see that goodness. I don't fully understand how is that for my benefit. But I should internalize that it's certainly for my benefit. His love will not be weakened before any kind of doichik or any kind of tsar. Tigbar, just the opposite, will be strengthened, and will be increased additionally. Every new impediment will turn to be a platform to increase for love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Right, so again, he told us Kol David Rachmana. So then basically, Gam Zul Tov, right? Yeah. That's what he taught.
Don't worry about it.
Gam Zul Tov. Now, if we think back for a second, to Zrizus, right? If we flip back to Zrizus, this was in chapter I believe this was in chapter 8. Right? If you remember chapter 8, he says, how do you acquire Zrizus? So he says the same thing as Zahiris. But then he said, V'amna mashiyuchel lahagber. It's almost in the beginning, second paragraph. V'amna mashiyuchel lahagber soyrerus hazeh. What can make a person more inspired to do the service of Hashem? Hu hahistaklus b'roi v'toivos she'HaKadosh Baruch Hu oise im ha'odam b'chol oise b'chol shoah. Is observing, istaklus, observing the abundance of good that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does with him at every moment and every time. Right? So in the beginning, first of all, in the beginning of your avodah, when you're just starting Zehirus Zrizus, right, you want to get yourself more into avodah, then it's perfectly fine to think about all of the good that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for you. In other words, very kind of self-centered, right? And all of the great miracles that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for you from the day you were born until the last day. The more a person contemplates, observes and contemplates the good that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for him, he will also recognize for himself the great obligation that he has to God, who does so much good for him, right? The more I realize how much good HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for me, the more I respond with my service. Right? So these are going to be the ways for him not to get lazy. Right? How can I be lazy when HaKadosh Baruch Hu does so much for me? Okay. Right? So even though I can't really do anything to pay back Hashem for what he did for me, but still at least I can praise his name, and fulfill his mitzvahs. Okay? Now he asks a question over here. So that's the first step. Again, so we see that in order to get yourself going for Avodas Hashem and to break your laziness, you have to appreciate you have to have that love for Hashem. And in the beginning, it seems like it's very selfish love. I see how much Hashem does for me, so I want to respond in kind. Right? But then he says, but 1 second, but he's answering a question, but 1 second, there are some people who are life is not maybe so good for them, right? What's going to be to those people? So what does he say? Remember? So let's see. Now there is no person, whatever matzav he finds himself, in onim osher, whether poor or rich, in borim whether healthy or sick. He doesn't see miracles and benefits even in his matzav, right? Because the wealthy person and the healthy person, obviously, so then he's going to thank Hashem for the wealth and the health. But what about ha'oni? What about the poor person? So even in his poverty, Hashem provides for him parnasa in a supernatural way, and doesn't let him starve to death. A person who is sick, Yechoyle was sick, even his almost to his deathbed. At that moment, the point is Hashem is still providing for him. He's taking care of him, that he shouldn't succumb to his sickness. Right? Everybody in the same situation. There is not a person. There's not a person who can't find something that he's obligated to in Hashem. Okay? And it's not a person. Every matzav, every person has something, right? Now, what doesn't he say over here? What doesn't he say over here? He does not say over here. Again, I didn't notice it then. I'm only noticing it now. He did not say over here, "Kol David Rachman L'Tavavid." He doesn't say, you're sick, so realize that your sickness is for your benefit. He didn't say that. No. realize that even within your sickness, you're going to find something good. Find something good to appreciate even in your difficult matzah. That was the advice back then. Now that a person is on a higher level in the Chasidus, he's saying, forget. You have to realize. You have to realize more. You have to realize that there is nothing that Hashem doesn't do that's not for your good. So even the hardships are beneficial. Even the hardships are for your own good. All right. So it's interesting. So again, does that mean that this Gamzul Toiva is only a Chasidus sort of Mida? I mean, we certainly seem to teach it to our kids, even as soon as they can learn.
Make a big deal out of it.
But maybe that's not the approach. Is that maybe the approach is, see the good in every situation first. Maybe kids just need to learn to appreciate, to see some benefit, even within their tough moments. I don't know, but that's certainly what this mapping seems to go. When in the beginning of one's growth, you focus on the benefits. Forget trying to realize and say, "Oh, my hardship is really good." That takes a much more of a skilled brain. It seems that's what he's saying. But a basic person can still find something good within the difficult matzah. But to transform the hardships into something beneficial, that's a later stage. Okay. Anyway, so that's the first answer. So back in Chasidus. So the first answer is that Shishove L'chol Nefesh. That's for everybody. That answer is. I'm sorry. That answer is called the Avid Rachmon L'Tav. Anything that Hashem does is for good. Ach Balei Hadeya Ha'amitis. However, people who are what he calls Balei Hadeya Ha'amitis. Before he calls them Balei Hadeya Ha'amuka. Now he calls them Balei Hadeya Ha'amitis. People who have a true knowledge. Einam Tzrichim Afilu Tamzeh. They don't even need this reason. They don't need the reason is even the hardship is for my good. Ki harei ein lahem lechavein le'atzmam klal. They don't have to be mechaven for themselves at all. Okay? Elakol tfilosam, their entire tefillah, right? They're praying for, meaning in other words, their innermost desire, their innermost wish is lehagdil kavod Hashem b'Yisbarach, is to increase the kavod Hashem. V'lasa is nachas ruach lefonav, and to do nachas ruach before him. V'chol ma sheyizgabru yikuvim negdom. So therefore, and the more that there are impediments and challenges that are barriers to them, ad sheyitztarchu hem yoser koyach la'aviram, that allow them, not allow them, but force them, but to exhibit more strength in order to overcome them. Hine yematz libam v'yismechu leharais toikev v'menosam. Their heart will strengthen v'yismechu, and they will rejoice leharais toikev v'menosam, to show the power, right, the strength of their emunah, of their bond, their faith, of their faithfulness. Kisar tzvo harosham begvura, like an army captain that has a reputation of gvura, of strength. Asher yivcha lo yitomid b'milchama chazaka yoser. He wants to choose the strongest war, the most difficult war, the most challenging war. Laharos tokfa b'nitzchoina, so that he comes out to be even a bigger hero after its victory. Right? So, this is really natural to a love that's flesh and blood, the regular love. That he will rejoice. Right? And to the point where he wants to have opportunities to show to his beloved how much he loves her or him, whatever the object, right? In other words, at the beginning of one's love, any additional challenge becomes an opportunity. It is looked as an opportunity to show my love, because the only way to show love is through a challenge. So therefore, the bigger the challenge, the bigger I can show my love. And so if the idea for this person is to show love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? I mean, we're always amazed, right? When we see somebody who overcame an incredible challenge, right? We are inspired by that. We are inspired by that because that shows kind of the strength of his inner spirit, which comes from his inner energy. So when we see somebody overcome tremendous challenges in order to show love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so we're inspired. That's a Kiddush Hashem. We call that a Kiddush Hashem. So therefore, a person whose whole life is to create Kiddush Hashem, so any additional challenge becomes not a challenge, but rather a vehicle to create the Kiddush Hashem, right? The despite, so to speak, becomes a because, right? So the challenge becomes the vehicle for Kiddush Hashem. So that's the second answer, and that's for Bali Deya Hoamitis. I'm not sure why that's answer. This I don't understand. Meaning, I understand if you tell me. So there's levels of love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we saw in the beginning, where my love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really very selfish, right? So I appreciate how much Hashem does for me. I respond in kind. I reached a higher level of love. I say to myself, I've internalized the idea that Hashem does good for me. Even when it doesn't seem like He does good for me, it's still good for me. So I respond in kind, even despite the challenges. Then finally, we have the highest level is the challenges themselves are a vehicle for they're not even challenges, they are just the opposite. They are the vehicles to show my love. Again, I understand that. Does that have to do with das, or is that with the level of love? So he seems to be implying that it's not so much totally in how much love I have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as much as it's totally in how much I was able to appreciate that every challenge can serve as a vehicle to express my love, right? So in other words, it's an intellectual exercise, not an emotional exercise, right? Love is an emotion, and so there are levels of love, but the highest level of love is achieved not through deeper emotion, but rather it's achieved through a higher level of intellect. Okay, so that's an interesting. I think that's a very interesting point. That that the impediment to the highest level of love may not be my emotional intelligence, so to speak. It's my intelligence, meaning how much I've internalized the map of how the love system works. Now, if I understand, again, that's what it seems to be saying. Although the mashal that he has is a mashal that a flesh and blood, romantic love. When a person is in love, naturally the challenge becomes a not an obstacle, but rather a vehicle to show love. So that's not a high level of intelligence. I'm not okay. So I'm not sure why he frames it that way. Why he frames it that way. Okay. All right. So let's. So that's the definition of love. Now he says, now he's going to talk about those three branches that he brought up before. Heim shloisha. They are the three that I mentioned before. Hadvekus, hasimcha, ve'akina. Dvekus, which means clinging, cleaving. Hasimcha, which is joy, ve'akina, and the jealousy, the zealousy. Now, they point out over here a very beautiful thing. Again, this is about precision of Ramchal. If you go back to where he mentioned these three before, you'll notice
in the same chapter.
Yeah. You'll notice just a few paragraphs above when he says "Unedaber atam inyan ha'ahava v'anafeho shehem shloisha," and the branches are three: hasimcha v'advekus v'akina. The joy, the cleaving, and the jealousy. Right. So the first one is which? Which one is first? I'm just going to go back to the first time he mentions them. He mentions them 3 times in this chapter, if I remember correctly. Let's see. Where did it go? Yeah. All right, so 3 times. So the first 2 times, simcha comes first, dvekus comes second, and kinna comes third. That's the first time it mentions it. Then it mentions it again. Again, joy comes first, dvekus comes second, kinna comes third. And now he mentions it the 3rd time, and the first thing comes dvekus, then simcha, then kinna. So kinna is always third, but dvekus and simcha over here switched places. And the first of the 3 that he explains is dvekus, right? So he says dvekus hushi liboy shel odom, etc., etc. So dvekus he explains first, while before that he mentions simcha first. So why is that? So I mean, there's answers here they bring on the bottom, but I want to leave it. Let's first naturally learn about dvekus and simcha, and then I think the answer will come out to be pretty straightforward why he switches the order. Right. So in other words, there has to be something for which dvekus comes first, and there has to be something for which simcha comes first. Okay. So what's the dvekus? Advekus hu sheyeh liboy shel odom mizdabe kol kach b'shem yisborach. Actually, let's stop for a second. What is dvekus in your vocabulary? What is dvekus? Before we read what dvekus is in Ramchal's vocabulary, let's think about when I think of dvekus, what do I think about? I personally think about
Closeness.
Right? Closeness to Hashem. Right? Closeness to Hashem. Is that okay? So let's see if that's what he means. Dvekus hu, what is dvekus? Hu sheyeh liboy shel odom mizdabek kol kach. A person's heart should be so attached b'Shem Yisbarach ad shekvar yosur melifnois ulehashgiach el shum dover zulosei. That nothing else interests me, basically. That my heart is so preoccupied with Hashem that all other things I disregard. V'hu mashabolav al mashal b'divrei Shlomo. This is what Shlomo Melech says is a mashal. Ayelas ahavim v'yalas chen and the deha yiravucha b'chol eis b'hava tishke tomet b'havosa tishke tomet. Right. In other words, Ayelas hashachar means like this hint, meaning this deer that's inspiring favor. Right, the deha, meaning her breasts, will sate you at all times. You will always be consumed with her love. Right. In other words, a very, very real, tangible love that is talking about. I mean, he's talking about the physical love for a person who's romantically in love, but it's a parable for learning Torah. Right, the person's so preoccupied with the words of Torah that he's constantly tishke tomet. He's constantly consumed with the love of Torah. So, right. So again, it's like somebody who's lovesick. When somebody's lovesick, so he's always preoccupied. He can't think of anything else. He can't concentrate on work. Can concentrate on other things, on personal needs, because he's preoccupied. Right. So over here, dvekus is not closeness. Over here, dvekus is mental attachment to an idea, right? And as he says like this, in the Gemara they said, about this pasuk. Omra Olav al Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas, and when he said about Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas, Shohayoyshiv v'oisik b'toira b'shuk hatachton shel tzipori, v'sadino imutal b'shuk ha'elim shel tzipori. That Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas was so preoccupied with learning Torah that he would be sitting in the lower marketplace, but his cloak lay on the upper marketplace. In other words, he basically dropped his cloak on someplace else, and he totally was preoccupied with learning that he forgot all about it. That's how much he was. Again, his mind was completely taken up by the words of Torah. So the end goal of this midah is a person should be so connected to Hashem, to his Creator, all time and all time, also every moment. But at least at the time when he's actually actively engaged in the service of Hashem, if he loves his Creator, then he certainly should have this kind of dveikus, that he's so consumed with the attachment to Hashem that nothing else perturbs him, nothing else interrupts him, nothing else interests him. Okay, so now, I'm sorry. So this is not the same dveikus. This is not the dveikus that we thought about, right? When we thought about dveikus, we thought about closeness, right? So, and if you think about it, so if you go back to the very beginning of Ramchal, right? When he starts at the very beginning, he says, Yisoid ha-Chasidus v'shoresh ha'avoda ha'tamima, right? What's the foundation of Chasidus? Right? What's the foundation of Chasidus? Hushi yizbarer v'yisames etzlo odom ha'chavose v'alamai. What a person has to figure out, what is his chayva in his world. I'm skipping forward a little bit. What did our sages tell us about this? That a person was created lisaneg al Hashem. That's right. That's what he says. That my chayva is to be lisaneg al Hashem, to delight in God's presence. Mm-hmm. But then again, skipping it a little bit. Next paragraph, he says, but when you further contemplate this, tira, you will see that true perfection, who had dveikus bo'izbarach, is the cleaving, the clinging to God. Right? So over here, what is dveikus? Right? Is hashleimus ha'amiti. That's true perfection. So it's not. So again, so there's dveikus and there's dveikus. So right, so there's a dveikus which is a state of mind, and then there's a dveikus which is a state of being. Right. So dveikus, that's a state of mind, is a branch of the idea of ahavas Hashem. Dveikus, which is a state of being, is really, it really comes at kedusha. Much later, after the totality of your avoida is to achieve closeness, like we said, like dveikus, hashleimus ha'amiti is dveikus bo'izbarach, right? So right now, the dveikus that he's talking about is a dveikus that's a state of mind, which is attachment, complete attachment of mind, totally consummation of mind for with the love of Hashem. Okay, so that's the definition of dveikus, and that's why the example here is Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas had no idea what was going on while he was learning Torah, because he was totally preoccupied with learning Torah. Okay. Fine, let's just finish this paragraph, okay? Rabbi Yerushalmi Omru, and Yerushalmi they said, Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa hayu oimid v'sparlo. Rabbi Chanina ben Doisa, when he would daven, he davened once, so bo chabarbar, and a chabarbar came, which is a type of a snake, v'hikishoy, and bit him. V'lo hifsik tfilasoi, nonetheless, he did not interrupt his davening. Right? And I think the story goes that the Chabar Bar died. Right? Omer lo talmidov, Rebbe v'lo hirgashta, didn't you feel it? Omer lehem, yova alai mitoich she'oyo libi mechavim betfilah, lo hirgashta, you're right, I didn't feel it. I was totally, since I was so concentrating on my davening, I did not feel it. Valad dveikus usharnu b'toyer pamim rabbis, and regarding dveikus, we were warned, Hashem told us about it many times in the Torah. La'ahav vo'es Hashem elokecha u'ledov kaboy, that you have to love Hashem and ledov kaboy, to cling to Him. Again, over there, if you ask me, all of those references to dveikus, I thought meant the shleimus dveikus, the state of being dveikus, not the state of mind dveikus. Uboy tidbok, uboy tidbokun, all of these psukim, right, that talk about that you have to cling to Hashem. I did not. So that's a question to me. Why does he use those psukim, which to me reference Hashem telling us that we have to be in a state of dveikus, not just to think in a state of dveikus. Not sure. David Omar, Dov kon nafshi acharecha. David says, my soul is clinging to you, after you. V'inyan kol eila psukim. The idea behind all of these psukim, echad, is one. Shu had dveikus sho'odam izdabik bo yisbarach she'ena yochel liporid v'lozuz mimenu. Is a clinging that a person has towards Hashem, that he can't separate or can't move away from Him. So over here, this sentence sounds like the dveikus is a state of being so close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that everything else is disregarded. So now I'm a little bit confused. It sounds like there were these two ideas, the dveikus of being, which comes really after avodas, working on yourself of a lifetime, so to speak, and achieving the level of kedusha, which creates a dveikus of being. It sounds like the dveikus of mind is an extension of that. I mean, I understand how something doesn't sit well with me over here. V'omer zechronim l'brach, Omer Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Rosh Lakish says, b'shlosh l'shoneh shel chiba, when 3 languages of chiba, of love, chiba v'kadosh baruch hu es Yisrael, v'onu l'meindim, etc., b'dveika, b'chashika, b'chafitza, that we learn the expressions of love that Hamor ben Shechem had towards Dinah, that he couldn't resist, right, control himself. L'moshel, kaviyachol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has the same expressions of love towards us. Dvika, chashika, ubechafitza. V'heim mamash anfei ha'ava ha'ikris. These are real branches of the true love. V'hainu ha'tshukas shezacharti, which is the yearning that I mentioned. V'adveikus, and the clinging. V'anachas, and the pleasure. V'oineg, and the joy. And the when a person is involved in anything that relates to his beloved, right? So the branches here are not the same the branches that he mentioned before. So these are not branches. These here are, what's the word? They're not branches of the expressions of love. They point this out over here, but I don't know if I want to say it exactly the same way, but there's the way that my love is expressed. These are branches of love of Hashem. Simcha, dveikus, and the kina. Simcha, dveikus, and kina. These are the 3 manifestations of Ahavas Hashem. But dveikus is really not just a manifestation of love of Hashem. It really, it goes back to the essence of what love of Hashem is, right? It's sort of the main branch of love of Hashem. As within that main branch of the love of Hashem, which is dveikus, which is complete attachment to Hashem, right? As we already pointed out probably before, is that ahava is gematria echad, which is one. In other words, love means becoming one with the beloved. So dveikus, which is synonymous with what he says, Vika, Chashika, right, Chuka. These are just all different ways of being so consumed with love that everything else becomes irrelevant. So these are the branches, but they're not the branches of the three manifestations of love. They are the branches of the feeling of love, right? The feeling of love has these different flavors, right? And that's what he's talking about over here. They are kind of sub branches of dveikus, while joy and jealousy, those are actual branches, like side branches of how love for Hashem can manifest. Okay, all right. So we'll stop here, but let's just summarize what we did today. So, right. So he told us what the essence of the love of Hashem is, right, and that is the yearning for closeness, right, the very tangible, right, the way. Very romantic, sort of very tangible yearning for Hashem's closeness, and it's not dependent on anything, right? And therefore, there's no impediments that should be able to break it up. As a matter of fact, he said that every impediment becomes actually the vehicle to show more and more love, right? And becomes a vehicle for more Kiddush Hashem, and therefore every impediment is a plus, not a minus. Right? And okay, and then he told us we only covered one of the three branches, which is the main one, which is dveikus, which shows again how much someone is attached to the thing that he loves, is by how much he disregards all the other things. Fine. The only thing is, again, just a question, and we'll leave that question as a question. What is it? Why is it that love of Hashem is so essential? Meaning, why do I have to have love of Hashem? To the point that afilu noitlas nafshecha, even it takes my life. Meaning, why is that? I mean,
such as requirement,
right? Meaning, what does Hashem want it for? Like, clearly Hashem doesn't need my love, but so why is He giving me this? Commands me, demands this level of total disregard for selfless love. I want you to love me how much? Selflessly. Right? I mean, these are very strong terms.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that? Is that it's a spiritual? If I love Hashem more, I'm more spiritual. Let's say I'm not out of love. I just feel I want to be preoccupied with Hashem. But I don't know if it's necessarily out of love. This is what Hashem wants me to do. Hashem wants me to connect with Him all the time, because that's the purpose of me becoming more perfect. I mean, yeah. So I naturally want to do everything that I want to do. Does it have to be as a result of this pure, very romantic sort of love? What if I just not out of love? I mean, out of fear. I don't know. I want to say fear because fear is. I just want to this. What is it that makes love such an essential element of avodas Hashem? Okay, we'll leave that as a question for next time.